career professional development. He has extensive experience in both career services as well as workforce development, and has worked to build strong relationships between all the stakeholders, which include the employers, the students, and of course the educators. He holds a Master's of Education degree as well as a Bachelor of History degree from Freed-Hardeman University. Again, I'd like to welcome these two gentlemen, and we're going to start with Brian, and I'd like him to spend the first 5 minutes or so telling his story that he did so eloquently just a few months ago.
Thank you. Well, pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for attending. And the introduction was almost spot on. I graduated in 2006.
Okay.
And, that same year, I became licensed. And so my family has a real estate background of multiple decades. And that was kind of always the plan, was for me to go and work for my family's company, which was based out of Northern Virginia, primarily in the form of shopping center development. So they had shopping centers in Northern Virginia and Southern Maryland and Tennessee and a few here in Charleston. And I'll tell a kind of short version of the story, but I'll never forget while walking into exams my senior year, I had a conversation with my father. And mind you, I had been working for my family's company since I was probably 12, doing everything from pulling weeds in parking lots to painting fire lanes, to helping with tenant upfit of various spaces, to attending leasing appointments with my dad, to working with property managers. I'd kind of spent a good majority of my early childhood and early adulthood just wrapping my head around commercial real estate. And so here I am walking to class one day, and my dad says, son, I've had a conversation with your grandfather who had started the company, Guy Beatty. And he said, unfortunately, in order for us to hire you, we would have to let go of someone within the company. And we're not in a position to do that. We're starting to see the writing on the wall. We're starting to see the market show signs that things are not going to be good in the short term and certainly in the long term. And so he said, what we'd like for you to do is go and get some, outside experience, learn some real estate, whether that be in commercial or in residential. And then that way too, we can bring you into the company. It won't look like we're just bringing in, my son into the company. And so I understand that very well now. Of course, when I heard the news, it wasn't great because I've been planning on doing that really for my entire life. And so I graduated, and then in September I became licensed. And then shortly thereafter, the market crashed. I mean, my first 2 years I was, bartending and waiting tables and selling real estate and doing real estate full time and just making money on the weekends when I could. And so my first 2 years weren't stellar. They weren't great, but they were enough to pay the bills and start to put some money away. But then 2008 hit, and everything almost stopped. And things seem faster now than I'm sure they did then. But as short sales became a thing, as foreclosures and bank-owned properties became more and more prevalent, I had fortunately partnered with a mentor that saw the writing on the wall as well and helped position me to be successful as the market started to turn. And then by 2009, when I had stopped bartending and waiting tables and was in real estate full-time, probably 60, 70 hours a week full-time, I propelled myself to the top 1% of agents, and I've been there ever since. So we're going on the 11th year of that. And obviously my business has transformed over time. But what I would like to focus on with some of your questions, Elaine, is how I positioned myself to do that. What were some of the things that I subscribed to that allowed me to get ahead of this, be intelligent, plan my business accordingly, and then execute. So that's my background. That's my short story.
Perfect, Brian. That sounds wonderful. Thank you for setting up the stage so well, and that's exactly what I think the students have come to the Zoom session to hear about. So I'm glad we're focused in the same direction. And with that, I'd like to have Cory just spend a couple minutes talking about the ways in which the Academic Success Center, and again, for those of you that are not familiar with the Academic Success Center, that is part of the business school. It's a group that, a really great team that their whole focus is trying to make sure the students are well equipped to go out and find those careers and find those jobs. So that with that, and Cory is the one that is our prime or our leader in terms of the interactions with the professionals. So with that, Cory, I'd like to turn it over to you so you can kind of explain to the students some of the things we're trying to do to help them now that we're all separated and sitting in our bedrooms.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the invitation. And Brian, it's good to hear your story on that. So, I mean, it seems like a long time ago when you think it's like 12 years ago, but in reality, it's not that long ago. I'm sure it seems a lot sooner than that to you. And, you know, we're experiencing a similar but very different situation. Similar in that we're looking at an economic downturn of some kind. Nobody really knows what that's going to be. But certainly a situation that's very different from 2008 in that this is just so sudden. It is across the board in so many different areas of industry and business. From my perspective, for what I do, it's concerning because we had a lot of students with some really great internships and jobs lined up for the summer and for post-graduation. And I know most of those internships really have gone away. Some students have heard from employers with apologies. Some it's a quick email that says, sorry, we're canceling this. Bigger concern for me, of course, is for our seniors that are getting ready to graduate, because if we had done this presentation a month ago, our conversation would have been completely different. So from my perspective, what I do right now is really helping students, especially seniors at this point, make a plan B. If there wasn't a plan B already, putting one together. And in some cases, a plan C and a plan D as needed. And it's not really going to be an easy time for seniors especially, and it's important for us to stay in contact. Any way I can help, I'm definitely here to do that. We're working every day. That's the important thing to let everybody know. We're not on campus, but we are working every day, and we're available every day. For freshmen, sophomores, juniors that are wrapping up the semester, same thing. You know, if you were planning on a great internship this summer and that's not going to pan out, there are still things you can do. It just comes down to making a plan B and a plan C if necessary. So, you know, I appreciate the time to be here today. And if you've got any questions that come up later, I'm certainly glad to do that. But certainly keep in mind, business school students, that we're still working in the Student Success Center every day.
Terrific. So again, students, the point from that is reach out. They're there. The advisors are still working every day. I'm emailing back and forth with Maggie. Amy's working on whatever internships that you find and you want to do. Again, you don't have to do for academic internships. You do not have to have a paid one. You can do it for free. We prefer paid ones. We've been encouraging for paid ones. But when these kinds of things happen, sometimes, I mean, you might, you know, if you find somebody that's willing and able and wants to do an internship with you and you can afford to do it and not get paid, we encourage you to do it because you will get that experience. And then also, of course, for our seniors that are on listening, you too, make sure you reach out to Cory. Kristen McMullen, the director, she's also awesome and can give you a lot of guidance and assistance on your resumes, practice interviews, all that stuff. The stuff they were doing, unfortunately, recently under the stairs at the college, they're doing now from their homes. So they are there and they want to help. So now I'm going to switch back over to Brian. Brian, I'd like you to do that. Spend a little bit of time on how you did make some of those plan A, B, C's, and D's, because clearly you probably did not have a plan B when you got that phone call from your dad, but you clearly, you know, did some things that worked, and maybe, you know, a few things you'd say, don't bother trying with that because I wasted my time doing that. So if you wouldn't mind spend a little bit of time on that, that'd be fantastic.
Sure. So, yeah, you know, before taking that phone call, everything was kind of, you know, sunshine and rainbows. Everything, it was all good. I had a plan and I was excited about it. And we talked about, you're going to spend this amount of time in management, this amount of time in leasing, and then you're going to run the company, and it's a big company. And it all sounded fantastic. But of course, when the tables turned, what did I know? What was I passionate about? Real estate. It's really all I ever focused on. So I knew real estate was the right choice for me. And residential, at least in my opinion at the time, was certainly easier to get into than commercial. And so, I got licensed. I was the person that showed up first and left last and wore a shirt and tie to the office. And, for those of you that haven't been around real estate agents, I mean, the typical attire is like khakis and a polo and some flip-flops. So that in and of itself was a differentiating factor. But what I had going for me was work ethic and passion and drive and the ability to focus. And I made it happen. And, the reality is that becoming licensed at 21 years old, and then, 2 years later at the age of 23, I was a young guy when I graduated. 23, the market crashes, having people go through literally the worst financial mess of their life. Why would they trust a 23, 24, 25-year-old with something as important as their home, which for a lot of people is where they have, the most, equity and of course, value, investment value. So I became a student of the market. And while I was learning how to be of value to clients, I was taking odd jobs left and right. I mean, I would sell a home to an investor, and then I would work with that investor on his projects and just make some side money. Benefit in doing that is that I learned how to put on a roof. I learned how to put down floors. I learned the right way to paint a house. You name it, I've done it. And the income from it wasn't great, but it was enough to survive, where most people just threw up their hands and said, okay, this is too hard. I can't stick out my hand and get a deal from 4 or 5 friends or colleagues or coworkers anymore. And so I'm out of the business. It just doesn't make sense for me to stay in. And that was never an option for me, because the reality is, what else was I going to do? Real estate was it, and I was going to make it happen. So the best way for me to earn the trust of the clients that I ultimately worked with was to be the person that was better informed about each home, about each neighborhood, about the values in that neighborhood, to be able to cite specifically home addresses and what they sold for and how long it took to sell and the difference between the list and sales price, and talk about trends within the marketplace, really educate people and solidify my position as somebody that was a market expert that people could rely on to make informed decisions about real estate. And that holds true today. And I think that's something our team is very well known for in this community, is our ability to speak intelligently to people about what's going on right now. And then based on what we're experiencing, because we have a really good pulse on the market, what we think is going to happen and what you should do as a result of that. Because we are consultants. Obviously, we help people buy and sell and negotiate and all that stuff, but they rely on us and our knowledge of the market to, navigate a very expensive purchase or very expensive sale. A lot of money's on the line here. But I couldn't do that by myself. I had to align with people that knew more about the topic than I did. And when I got licensed, real estate teams were not really a thing. I mean, that's really kind of emerged over the past several years, where it makes sense for an agent just starting out to join a team, because when you, as an example, join my team, all your expenses are paid. All your leads are provided for. You have people that set appointments for you. You have people that manage the contract and closing process for you. Your job, quite frankly, is to pick up the phone and create contacts, cultivate relationships, ultimately earn their trust, find them a home to buy, represent their home to sell, and then once those happen, let the team take care of the rest so that you can then go back and do it again and again and again and again, hopefully several times a month. Those are the people that are making really good incomes, and there's still plenty of income to be made in real estate. But in the beginning years, it was about proving myself, and I was nervous about people judging me for how old I was. So I had to be the person that wowed them with the presentation, with the knowledge, to make up for what I lacked, which was experience. But I made up for that in the form of tenacity. I mean, I had some people that agreed to work with me just because I wouldn't leave them alone. I remember my first listing I ever got was from somebody that said, Brian, you've called me so much that I can't think of anybody else I'd rather give the listing to. And I ended up selling it. And that was just like the reinforcement that I needed, that I'm doing the right things. The opportunities will continue to come so long as I'm willing to work hard and create them. So there you go.
That's terrific. Appreciate that, Brian. Those are some really good ideas. This question is kind of for both of you, but I'm going to start with Cory. And that, because I know, Cory, you basically, been through these ups and downs too. As far as coming out of school, what are some ways to really focus on saving money? Because again, Brian just mentioned, making money and saving money while you're working on that career that you may or may not get to start right away, or you might get to start, but you still got to eat, right? So can you guys give maybe some ideas of different things to save money, and also maybe other kinds of jobs that you might want to, encourage students to think about as far as possible options? And Cory, why don't we start with you, and then Brian, I'd like you to chime in too.
The biggest thing for me starting out right out of college was to have a budget. None of my friends even thought that was an issue. They got this offer letter and they started dividing that by 12, and that was what they were going to have every month, and they didn't consider all the other ancillary things that came along with that. I was encouraged early on to have a budget, to know what those numbers were, to check it constantly. I actually developed, and this is not me personally, but it's something that was suggested to me, and I did it and it worked. At the beginning of the month, when the paycheck would come in, I would get cash in hand for X number of dollars. This is my entertainment budget for the month. And this is if I want to go out. This is if I want to go to dinner, something like that. This is the cash I have. And when that's gone, it doesn't get replenished until the next paycheck comes. And I don't decide, well, it's the end of the month, I'm out of money, but I'm just going to go ahead and borrow against the next month. I didn't do that. I stayed with that plan. I always still do. I have for 30 years now. I make a deposit to savings automatically. I don't do that by my own. It comes out of my check automatically. When that paycheck goes to the bank, X number of dollars immediately gets transferred to my savings account. I don't even think about that money. I just know that I have a savings account. And I can tell you from experience, because just like Brian, I've been through these ups and downs as well. You never know when they're going to hit. And if you're not thinking ahead, years ahead on these things, it can be a big issue. So right now, for sure, especially if you're getting ready to graduate, create a solid budget, numbers on a sheet of paper. If you want to use Excel, that's what I do. So I don't have to do the math, because I don't trust myself to do that. But some way that you have a defined, what that income is and what the expenses are, and really think about managing that money and make a deposit to savings every month. Now, right now, that's going to be hard to do. If I were to get furloughed or laid off right now, obviously I'm not going to be making a deposit to savings anymore. That's what the savings for. It's my rainy day. And rainy days come along all the time. They can be big stuff like this. It can be you're driving down the road and you blow out a tire and you got to buy a new tire, and that can be a big expense. But definitely think about ways that you can define your budget, and always, every chance you get, make a savings deposit for yourself.
Cory,
Great advice.
I was just going to make a quick comment on that, just because, again, I have children also graduating this year, a senior. And, it is true now that we've all gotten used to tapping to pay and using using our cards and our Apple Pay, et cetera, we don't necessarily track where we are spending our money. And, again, right now, as we work towards, it's going to take a little bit of a while to save the money. You might want to take that cash out instead and have, like you were saying, Cory, X amount, or just even in your head, but tracking that so that you don't out and have to call mom and dad and say, I'm about to go red on my account again. Because I do think it's all great. It's very convenient, but at the same time, it does. You just don't realize. Like, I could not tell you right now how much I've spent on groceries this month, whereas I used to know all the time. But because now I just kind of tap and pay, I don't keep track of it anymore. So I do think that we're all going to have to be a bit better at figuring out ways to make sure we're watching those pennies and keeping track of what we're spending. On to you, Brian, in terms of particularly expenses and things like that, as some of these students might, take your advice and maybe actually go and get the license. Again, I feel bad because we've been telling the commercial real estate finance majors to not finish don't get the license till you finish the degree. But some of you that are a little bit younger, and if you want to go get your license early and join a team and be an assistant on a team, I'm not sure that's such a bad strategy. I wouldn't have given it necessarily last month for the commercial real estate finance majors, because Brian, I don't know if you know this, but if they get the major, they actually don't have to do the 3-year apprentice, and they can actually sit for the broker's license after they sit for the sales license. And but with for the students that are further away from the major, you might want to think about potentially getting your license now to gain some experience in case these internships take longer to come back. But I'd like to turn it back over to you, Brian, as far as some ideas about cutting expenses.
Sure. I think the reality is if you don't know how much money is going to be deducted from your bank account every month, no matter what, then you're in trouble. So you need to figure that out first. How much money do I need to make to survive? Obviously, my financials are a little more complicated because I never make the same amount of money every month. It's always different because I'm in sales. So I have to track my expenses very closely and ensure that what I'm paying for, I'm getting a return on investment on, or that I'm benefiting from in some way, shape, or form. You guys won't have anything that complicated just yet. So the reality is there's a great book out there, and it's really more designed for business owners, but likely worth a read. It's a book called Profit First. And it's a great book because it really teaches you how to account for your money properly. So as an example, I'm a 1099 independent contractor. I have to write a check to the government every year for my taxes. So when I receive a commission check, just like Cory, I don't do it at every commission check because sometimes I've got 3, 4, 5 in a day, but every 2 weeks I'm reconciling my accounts, and a percentage of each, of the 100% of the income, a percentage of it goes toward savings, a percentage of it goes toward taxes, a percentage of it goes toward business expenses, a percentage of it goes toward personal expenses, and a percentage of it goes to my investment account. And that's it. You just need to know your numbers in order to determine what those allocation percentages are. And I have different accounts for each one of those types of accounts so that it makes things really easy, because it's just like the way I explain it is this. When you get a new tube of toothpaste and you put that toothpaste on your toothbrush, you put a thick glob on there. And if it dumps in the sink, who cares? Because you got a whole tube of it. But when it gets toward the end, we get really creative on finding little ways to get as much toothpaste out of that thing as possible.
It's true.
So if we have one account that all of our money sits in, then it's just like having a big tube of toothpaste. So it just forces you to be more careful. So I would look for things that I would really just ask myself the question of, is this a necessary expense right now? I mean, I can remember, I met my wife in college, and we just celebrated our 11-year anniversary last month. And I will never forget going to Fig downtown on Meeting Street. And I was working at Charleston Grill at the time as a food runner on Saturdays and Sundays. And I think one of the cooks was just messing with me because I was telling them how I had taken Julie, my wife, out to dinner at Basil. It was where we had our first date. And she admits this now, but the only reason she agreed to the date is because she's never had Thai food. So it worked out. But anyways, I was talking to the cook, and I was telling him about the pad thai. And he's like, oh, if you like pad thai, you should go to Fig. And so I remember sitting down at Fig and looking at the menu and it being like 30, 40 bucks an entree. And I was like, there's no way I'm paying for this. And so one of the waiters comes over and is like, I heard you guys have really good pad thai. And he's like, did you mean pate?
Oh, no.
And I had a bite of bread and a sip of water and we left.
Oh, man.
But it was really just an example of, look, we did everything we could to make sure that I didn't have to make those phone calls to say, hey, I'm out of money and I need some help. And the reality is I had to make that phone call once, and it was not a great feeling because you feel like a bit of a failure. Here you go out into the world and you're supposed to be self-sufficient. And I'd had a job, again, since I was making money since I was 12, but really an actual job since I was 16. And so that wasn't a great feeling, but sometimes there's only so much you can do. But I will also say that where there is a will, there is a way. When you guys get into whatever portion of the real estate field you get into, whether it be on the sales side or the leasing side or the management side or the finance side, there are plenty of companies out there that are still doing really well that still want some part-time help, that are willing to pay something which gets you a foot in the door, and then you just have to demonstrate value and then you're in. Right now we're hiring. I mean, for us, I've been waiting for something to happen to get some of these part-time agents out of here, because the reality is Charleston is the second most saturated real estate market in the country.
Wow.
We've got over 7,000 agents and only 4,600 homes available for sale right now.
Yeah.
So for every agent that we add, without that increase in inventory, it dilutes my market share. And so now you'll start to see that the agents that are, they're just kind of in it to sell to their friends, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but we want to take as much of our unfair share of the market share as we can.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of real estate companies out there that are still hiring. And you also have to remember that, we're coming off of an incredible February. I mean, February, at least for the residential market, was better than it had been since 2007. And even if you look at March numbers, I mean, the number of people looking at homes is down about 60%, but we maintained the same level of homes under contract every week over week in March, even while people were at home. So there's still a lot of demand out there. And the dynamics of the market are certainly much different now than they were in 2008. And hopefully businesses have been smart and they haven't gotten too kind of, fat and happy and just, reckless with their budgets. But I do think that there are probably a lot of people right now that are looking and saying, oh my gosh, things got out of hand. I need to revisit my budget. I haven't looked at my profit and loss in a year. I haven't even done a profit in a year. So I think that you guys will have plenty of opportunities so long as you have the work ethic and the drive and the passion and the integrity and the results-based attitude to go out and make it happen.
I think you're right, very much so, Brian. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because again, I've been through, this is my fifth, and I always tell my students when we go into these, that the ones that have gone through the education, the ones that are focused, the ones that have spent the time building their skill set and understand, and are willing to work as analysts for, it might not be the most glamorous job. RTC was a lot of work. RTC, for those of you that don't remember or haven't heard of it, it was a Resolution Trust Corp in 1986. Basically, savings and loans were going up all over the country and taking real estate back. And a bunch of people had to be hired to analyze that real estate and assist with a relatively, many would say maybe it wasn't such a calm disposition of the assets, but it was. And it's actually how we got our REITs. But anyways, a lot of the colleagues that I came out in a recession as well. And a lot of my colleagues worked there first as analysts. I was a consultant. I worked in an appraisal company. Again, it might not be what you wanted to do. You wanted to do acquisitions. Well, right now there probably, won't be as many acquisitions, but there certainly could be lots of these other jobs. And a lot of my colleagues are, super busy right now trying to work all this stuff out, trying to figure out what they're going to do with the leases and how they're going to help pay their rent so that they can pay their mortgages so that they can keep their buildings. So, again, it's not as easy anymore. A month ago, it was a lot easier to read, but those of you that spend the time, I think, you'll realize that you'll in the long run come out a lot better, because you'll see a lot over these next 5 years. You'll see a lot of and learn a lot. And with that, I'd like to turn over to the kind of the emotional and stress with dealing with this uncertainty and with this loss, because, and again, Brian, you've been through it. Cory, you're trying to help students through it. Are there any kind of tips? And I did want to also remind students that for those of you that get into real financial difficulty while you're at the college, there is a fund, and we have been fundraising. You should have gotten an email about it earlier this week, and they are allocating funds. You have to apply for it. But if you're about to, you can't make your rent payment, you have no food, they're there. We as a college are here to help you. We want you to succeed. So please don't be shy to ask if you really need it, because the money's there. They've been raising money all for the last month from professors, from parents, from different sources, and the money's there. And I think I read it was about 200 people so far, but maybe more. So make sure you check into that if you need the help. So back to the emotional kind of dealing with loss, Brian, you deal with no all the time, but maybe both of you could spend just a couple minutes, and then I think we'll open it up for people if they have questions after that.
I was going to add that, when you're living through these times, you think that this is as bad as it's going to be, and it's never going to get better. And it always does in one way or another. So it's difficult while you're facing it now. I'm not minimizing by any stretch. This is really, it's a really concerning situation. But it's also a time for you to assess what your plans are and really think about how can you take this situation and make the best of it. And, in the past, when I've been in these downturns, I picked up a second job, sometimes a third job on the side of that one. Wasn't great. I didn't enjoy that, but it was something I was able to do. Just talking the other day to a student who had lost a really good internship this summer, and I was like, okay, yes, that's unfortunate. But right now, there are organizations and companies that are hiring people. They're crying for people right now. And you have to think ahead a year or two. You're going to be sitting in an interview a year from now or 2 years from now, and somebody's going to want to ask you, what did you do during this economic downturn and during this pandemic? And it's going to be really important for you to have a good answer to that about, I had this great internship lined up. It fell through. A lot of people had the same problem, but this is what I did instead. And it's going to it's going to be an important thing for you to talk about, because this is a shared experience. Everybody's going to understand what happened to you. This is, I think, a little bit different than previous situations, because this is just all encompassing across the country. Every one of the states is impacted by this. So it's going to be it's going to be a tremendous moment in history for you, and people are going to want to talk to you about what did you do during this time, and having the ability to talk about how you stepped up and did something to improve and did something to help is going to make a big difference. And it's really difficult, no question.
Good point. Brian,
we're talking about
deal with loss and no, the word no.
We deal with the word no so many times per day that no is just one more no to get to a yes. So we celebrate the no. But we're focusing on this on almost a daily basis on my team. Every single morning, my entire team and I talk at 8:30. We have a morning huddle. And I think what's incredibly important right now is that on a daily basis, people need motivation, they need accountability, and they need to focus on the pillars of their life that make them feel happy and complete. So, for me, that would be, family, business, financial, health, which is physical and mental, and then spiritual. If the 5 pillars of my life are in balance, then everything is fine. Maybe you need to do a little soul searching and find out what that is for yourself, or just take what I just said and use it for yourself. But the reality is that it's just kind of a depressing world right now. There's not a ton out there that's making people really excited about anything. It's a lot of doom and gloom. It's a lot of, just frustration. So how do you get yourself out of that rut? Well, I mean, for me personally, and for a lot of people on my team, the first thing that we do in the morning is we try to get some sort of exercise in, clear our minds, find something that just shuts your mind off. We've always said that motion creates emotion. So for us, I think it's always great to, get in some form of physical exercise before we start making phone calls, because then we have the energy to do it. But if you kind of are, in that stage right now where you haven't put on anything other than sweatpants for the past 2 weeks, and you're close to finishing Netflix, then yeah, you need to find something to just break up your daily schedule. Still live by a daily schedule. I think that's incredibly important. If you don't come out of this with a new habit or hobby or plan, then you need to ask yourself just how disciplined you are as an individual. And I know that's so much easier said than done. But if you're lacking the motivation or the person that is helping you get there, then find that person, whether it be a friend or a family member or someone that you trust that's, here at the college or in the, a community that, you serve or have an interest in. Find some people to latch onto that can kind of help you through this, because it'll get better. I mean, this too will pass, but in the short term, got some geese flying over me. In the short term, I think it's really important to do something to better yourself on a daily basis, whether that be reading or working out, or putting out job resumes, something to keep the ball moving forward, to keep the needle moving. I guess one more thing that I would say is this, Elaine. If you have been in a bit of a rut for the past week or two, tell yourself right now that you've just been on a mental vacation and that you needed it and that it's okay. Give yourself permission to just let that go, because you can't change what's happened, and then start tomorrow.
Great. Very good advice, Brian. Really good advice. Okay, so Adam, how should we do the questions? Are people writing a chat, or do you want them to unmic themselves to ask the question? How do you think will work best?
We're at 30, so I think that we can just kind of trust people to unmute themselves.
Okay.
and ask a question. So if you guys have one, go ahead and reach out.
Yeah, if not, I have additional ones, but I'd love to hear yours, and I'm sure the panelists would too, if you've got them.
I have an opinion question for Brian. This is Scott Stamps. My video camera doesn't work. I don't think that matters at this point.
No, that's fine. Go for the question.
With the uncertainty with mortgages the way they are, how do you think the market's going to look in August, assuming that the banks don't open up and be more flexible than they have in the past? From what I can gather right now, they're doing forbearance plans for 90 days. But at the end of that, if they expect all payment due, what do you think it's going to do to the market?
I think if you look at some of the reports and you look at the anticipated number of mortgage defaults coming down the pipeline, I think it is going to have an impact. It's something that we're gearing up for and something we're positioning for, whether it be for homeowners that obviously are going to be laid off, that maybe try forbearance. And, I think just like with a lot of things, there's a lack of information, not a lack of information, but a lack of general understanding about how some of these things work. Like forbearance is not forgiveness. They're going to defer payments for delay payments for 3 months, but on that 4th month, you got to write a big check. And a lot of people aren't going to be in the position to do that. So then they're going to say, well, what about a refinance? Well, you can't, because you did a forbearance. And then they'll say, well, I can't pay that. So I guess we're looking at a short sale or a foreclosure. So I think tough to say what the mortgage market is going to look like. I think they've done a pretty decent job so far in helping us get out of the weeds on this, but time is the biggest enemy right now. The longer this thing lasts, the worse it's going to get. And it's just the reality is the data is not there for us to say with relative certainty what's going to happen, because what we say today could change next week, could change next month. All we can do is keep a really close pulse on things right now and formulate opinions in the now and in the short term. But if I were to give a long-term opinion, I would say that, one of the biggest things that's impacted by this is consumer confidence.
Yes.
No one is, at this point in time, at least from what we're seeing, no one is willing to pay more for something than what somebody just bought it for.
Right.
So in that respect, prices are flatlined. And if you look at our local stats, I mean, especially with residential, because I can't speak on the commercial market like I can the residential market, but at least residentially, we put 20% more listings on the market in March than we did in February. We absorbed a lot of that inventory. But if we continue to put listings on the market while people are starting to now feel the financial impact of everything that's happening, which, real estate's always a lagging indicator of the economy, or the majority of it is. So I think 6 months from now, you're going to have a lot of people that thankfully still have equity in their homes that will be able to sell and get out. But then the question is going to be, where do they go next? Do they buy? Do they rent? That, I think, is a big unknown that not everybody's talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, for those of you that are listening, write this down. Where there is chaos, there is also opportunity.
True.
But Scott, I think in the grand scheme of things, the mortgage market is going to have to come up with some creative ways of getting people into homes. I'm sure they probably will. But one of the big differences between now and say 2008 is that people have a lot of equity. They've been riding a market, at least here locally, that's appreciated for 8 years in a row, year over year. I mean, year-to-date prices were up 9% compared to the first 3 months of last year. So, so long as they're not being, reckless with their spending, or they didn't just pull out a home equity line of credit to buy a boat, and we're not in the position we used to be in, where your local bartender also owns 8 investment properties,
Right.
and they have no, equity in them whatsoever, because they're just collecting rent checks. But I don't want to take up too much time on that, because I could speak on that for a long time. But does that kind of answer your general question?
Yes, I appreciate your help with that. Thank you.
Yeah, and we can chat more about that offline if you'd like.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Brian is available, as well as clearly Cory is, and I am too. But yeah, he's more than happy to talk to anybody that has additional questions or comes up with them later, as they, as you think of them. I saw Kennedy had a question. Kennedy, do you have a mic? Do you want to ask it, or do you want us to do it?
How should we contact you for further elaboration? Through email or?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I just put all that in the chat. So I've got my cell phone, my website, and my email address.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, and Kennedy, what was your?
God, have we met before?
I don't think we have. We have mutual acquaintances. My brother's a realtor in the area, and
your name sounds familiar.
I bought a house from y'all, I believe, from an agent that worked for you at one point.
Oh, there
Gotcha.
you go. Great. This is a question from Kennedy Stapleton. His question is, do you believe Charleston is going to be disproportionately negatively impacted relative to the rest of the country? Following up on this, do you think it has the ability to bounce back faster than other areas? So what's your read on our region? And that's probably not for you, Cory. Sorry. I believe that one is for Brian.
I would say look at the industry that this is impacting the most. Look at food and bev. Look at tourism, which we rely on heavily. A lot of service-based industry is getting hit really hard by this. And we've got a lot of people that work in those industries. Sorry, someone's calling me. In those industries in Charleston. But then, you've got a bunch of layoffs that are happening in multiple types of industries. So do I think we're going to be disproportionately and negatively impacted compared to some other areas? Well, yes, because we rely on some of those things more than, of course, other areas of the country. But it's also going to depend on how many cases we get and just how bad, COVID-19 spreads here in this area of South Carolina. And I'm fairly certain on this, in that, Mount Pleasant has the most reported cases in the entire state. And I had to, run an errand just before getting on this Zoom call. And it's, you can't be too frustrated because you're on the road too, but there was traffic like crazy today. And I just want to be like, why aren't you all at home?
Yeah.
All of you really work
Oh,
in essential services right now.
that's sad.
And so, yeah, it is a little bit sad. And so it's kind of tough to say. I do think that we do have more opportunity to get hit harder than certainly other areas of the country. Just a little too soon to tell, I guess.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. So I know during the summer, a lot of college students rely on jobs like a lifeguard or being a food server or a sales associate or whatever. And this is a little bit different from '08, as in it's kind of just stuck a stick in the gears and everything came to a grinding halt right now. If that's not back to normal, what other avenues could we look for to make income in the meantime? And we don't know how long this is going to go. So if it goes into the summer.
I can give you some good news on that. I think, one of the things that we look for when we hire somebody is somebody that, especially someone that wants to start out on the sales side of things rather than the administrative side of things. We have a role on my team called an inside sales agent. So they are paid every day to pick up the phone and send emails and send text messages and communicate with people and ultimately set appointments for our agents. So when you, I would imagine that something similar to that exists in the commercial world. You guys probably know better than I do, but on my team, if someone's an inside sales agent, I'm paying them $100 a day. I'm paying them $25 every time an appointment they set is attended by an agent on my team, and they get 5% of the commission at closing. And so a good inside sales agent can make 50, 60, 70, 80. There are some that have made $100,000 a year just by being that person on the front lines that communicates with people to set our agents up for appointments. And then what better way to get into real estate than to build a foundational element where no matter how much business you have coming in, you always have the ability to generate your own.
Yeah, no, Brian, that's a great example. And again, once back to us saying you have to be creative and look around to see who's hiring and hone these skills of being able to work from home, because there will be jobs that people are going to, need to get done that you can do from home. I mean, so picking up these skill sets, that was going to be one of my questions for you, Brian, as far as, specific skill sets that you feel people, if they've got them, they're going to have potentially a really good leg up, whether it's any certifications or other, tools that if they're, if they can demonstrate efficiency, that'll help them differentiate themselves.
I mean, I hire for talent because I can teach anyone to sell real estate. My responsibility is to create an environment for you to be as productive and profitable as you want to be. But I'm not going to pick up the phone and make phone calls for you. I'm not going to do your work for you. I'm going to teach you how to do that at a really high level. So the thing that I look for, probably above anything else, is that kind of almost that like hunter-killer mindset. I want someone that's hungry. I want somebody that has work ethic. And, I was saying this to someone the other day, but I can teach you all the right things to say and do and how to present things, but I cannot teach you how to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and feel motivated to go work. So mindset and work ethic and passion for what you do is incredibly important to me. And then of course we look at, personality profiles, and we get pretty granular in terms of which positions we hire specific people for. But in the grand scheme of things, I look for people that have passion, integrity, and that are results-based. And people that have obviously emotional intelligence. They're aware of what they know and what they don't know. And the courage to not only fail, but also to succeed in a big way. You guys are probably all in similar positions where, the first tier is going to be making enough money to pay your bills. And then the next tier is going to be, now I'm making money to where I've got spending money. If I want to go out to eat, I can go out to eat. If I want to buy something, I can buy something. Nothing crazy, but I can go and buy something. Once people reach this level of comfort, then they become less motivated to reach for the next step and the next step and the next step. Those are the people that are hard to find. So if you can instill that in your potential employer and actually demonstrate it through things that you've done, then that's the home run for someone like me.
Cory, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, definitely right now is a good time to be looking at who is still working. And, you know, if you were, lifeguard's a great example. A lot of students, I see that on a lot of resumes. So if you were planning on a job that's very, by nature, it's very much customer facing, like in lifeguarding or working in a summer camp or something along those lines, it's not going to happen this summer. You just might as well expect that that's probably going to be the case. On the flip side of that, there are still a lot of supply chain jobs and a lot of what I would call critical grocery or critical retail jobs that are out there. And they're hiring like crazy. Publix is looking for 50,000 people right now. Amazon looking for delivery drivers. So if you were planning on a summer job like lifeguarding, this is a good fit. It's going to allow you to still keep busy. It's going to allow you to still collect a paycheck. It's certainly not that summer internship that you were hoping for with JP Morgan or something like that, if that was something that lined up. But there are still some very critical jobs that are out there that need to be filled yesterday. And I don't think that's going to change through the summer for sure. Hopefully, I think this week, from what I'm seeing, is supposed to be a very critical week to see if indeed cases really do kind of level off and hopefully start to drop off in the next couple of weeks. But there's still a long way to go. I wouldn't bank on anything being available through the summer. I would just be thinking right now, what you need to find for the summer is the stuff that's hiring right now, and go for those jobs.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Thank you.
Looks like we're just about out of time. So we have one last question. If not, I think I will close out. Does anybody have one last quick question? You're dying to ask? Okay, well, with that, I really do appreciate both Brian and Cory spending the evening with us for the last hour. I appreciate all of you coming to this. I applaud you. I think it's important to do these kinds of things, to get ideas and to build your skill sets. I encourage you to pay attention. There are lots of free, I'm actually almost like a kid in a candy store some days, because I'm getting all these invites to webinars with these super famous people talking about, where they think things are going, and they don't care who comes into the room. They're open. And for my students, I've been trying to send them out as they become available. When they get recorded, I try to send them out to you. Take the time to listen, because you learn a lot, and you also get to kind of see some of these players that, particularly if you're going into the commercial real estate. That's what I tend to be sending. In addition, if you have the time and you have the energy, go get some of the certifications. There's nothing to stop you from getting, just because, we're not doing a test on campus doesn't mean you can't go get it. You can go get your license if you want to do real estate. You can get certified in Argus if you want to do it on your own. There's a Bloomberg certification out there. There's lots of other certifications that you can get, do them over the summer, and, build the resume so that when the time comes, you'll be able to be standing out and really differentiating yourself. Again, we're all here to help you. Brian is more than willing to take your calls, emails. Cory and his team is super happy to hear from you. Please use that resource. You're paying for it. Use it. And again, Adam and I are here as well as your faculty that are teach real estate. Well, all the faculty of the business school are here, and we want to help. So please stay buckled in there. Keep working on your classes. Don't take the fact that you can take a D and then get a P and just quit doing a class. Keep working at it. The faculty are here working for you. We want you to keep working on these projects. We want you to keep working on your skill set. Pass those exams. Get an A in your finance exam, because you had the time to practice all those problems before the exam. Don't take this time as oh, well, it's a hurricane party, because it's not. This is a little bit longer term for us. So anyways, with that, again, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you very much, Cory. And guys, thank you all for coming. We really, really appreciate it. Have a good rest of the week. And as Brian said, if you have gotten a little bit lackadaisical, wake up tomorrow morning and say, nope, today's the day. I'm going to go out there and really, really work on myself and work on my skill sets and move myself ahead. All right?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And seriously,